Ontario's real estate market is not crashing overnight. It is quietly unraveling, and the only people revealing the damage are appraisers, forced to document just how far prices have fallen. As inventory hits 20-year highs and appraisals come in tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars below what buyers paid, the truth is no longer hidden behind agent optimism or developer promises. In a market where Toronto condos and suburban homes now routinely appraise below peak prices, appraisers are not speculating. They are exposing a multi-year correction that sellers and lenders cannot ignore. The real panic is in what these numbers say about the deals waiting to close and the illusions that are finally breaking. So how did we reach this point? And why have appraisers become the last line of defense against fantasy pricing? Ontario's appraisers are trained to cut through market noise, relying on standards meant to keep their work impartial, regardless of pressure from buyers, sellers, or lenders. Every appraisal begins with a careful selection of comparable sales, called comps. The guiding principle is not to chase headlines or satisfy client expectations, but to anchor value in the most recent, relevant market evidence available. Under the Canadian Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, known as CUSPAP, appraisers are required to select sales that best reflect current market conditions. While there is no hard and fast rule in CUSPAP demanding comps from the last 90 days, most lenders and mortgage insurers now insist on this window for urban properties. In practice, this means banks often tell appraisers to find 3 to 4 sales of similar properties, ideally within the past 3 months, and to explain, line by line, any adjustments made for differences in features, size, or location. A typical Ontario appraisal report lays out a grid, with the subject property in one column and recent sales in the others. Each sale is dissected and adjusted for square footage, renovations, parking, and even floor level in a condo. If a sale is older than 90 days, the appraiser must justify its inclusion, often with a written note about slow sales volume or a lack of newer data. The process is transparent and highly documented. Every dollar added or subtracted is accounted for, and the final value is a defensible conclusion backed by evidence and professional reasoning. This approach creates a hard limit on how much optimism or wishful thinking can seep into the numbers. When the only available comps show prices falling, appraisers are duty-bound to reflect that reality, regardless of what a seller hopes or a developer promises. The grid does not lie. In today's Ontario market, appraisal values are coming in lower, sometimes drastically so. Not because appraisers are pessimistic, but because recent sales leave no room for higher numbers. These standards separate professional valuation from market speculation, and they are the reason appraisers have become the market's most credible and sometimes most unwelcome truth-tellers. Redacted appraisal reports circulating among Ontario brokers and mortgage specialists show a clear pattern. Appraisers are formally declining to accept developer-supplied valuation letters as evidence of market value. One typical refusal states that client-supplied developer value letters are not a substitute for recent resales. Under the Canadian Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, these lines appear on documents delivered to buyers and lenders in 2024 and 2025, often with a breakdown of comparable sales drawn from the last 90 days, and all coming in well below original contract prices. In the Greater Toronto Area, these appraisals are paired with headline numbers from the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board. September 2025, data shows 74,201 active listings, a 13% jump year over year, and months of inventory hitting 5.2, the highest for a September in over a decade. The average Greater Toronto Area home price sits at $781,500, down about 7% from the previous year, while the HPY composite has slipped to $969,700, its lowest point since early 2021. Townhouse and multiplex prices have fallen by more than 7%, with northeastern Ontario registering declines above 8%. Sale to new listings ratios have collapsed to 34%, deep into buyer's market territory. These numbers are not abstract. Lenders are now attaching their own language to mortgage files. Recent comparable sales indicate a downward trend in value. Additional equity required to close. In case after case, buyers are notified that their appraisals have come in $50,000, $100,000, or even $150,000 below what they agreed to pay. Assignment listings sit unsold for months, and failed closings are documented by lender letters demanding cash top-ups or warning of deposit forfeiture. Charts sourced directly from the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board and the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation map the inventory surge, price declines, and the growing gap between contract value and appraised value. These documents, stamped with official dates and sources, leave little room for debate. The evidence is not just anecdotal or speculative. It is written into the paperwork of every failed assignment, every forced cash injection, and every lender refusal. The silent recalibration is spelled out in black and white long before it appears in headlines. In downtown Toronto, buyers who signed pre-construction contracts during the 2020 to 2022 boom are now facing a reality check at closing. Appraisals are landing tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars below what these investors agreed to pay. Take Liberty Market Tower, where units launched at $1,400 to $1,650 per square foot. As keys are handed over in late 2024, appraisals are coming in 15% to 20% lower. For many, that means a shortfall of $90,000 to $120,000, money that must be paid in cash, or the deal collapses. Assignment sellers hoping to offload contracts before closing are running into dead ends. Listings for projects like Jack Condos, Untitled, and Chateau Auberge sit for months, often at prices 15% to 20% below the original contract. Even then, buyers are scarce. One assignment at 485 Wellington was listed for 9 months and still could not attract an offer that would cover the original purchase price. When appraisals come in $80,000 or $100,000 below contract, lenders demand the difference up front. If the buyer cannot pay, the assignment fails. The developer keeps the deposit, and the buyer faces legal threats or walks away with nothing. Developer responses are inconsistent. Some offer take-back financing or minimal closing credits, $5,000 or $10,000 against a six-figure gap. Others refuse any relief, insisting buyers close at the original price or risk forfeiting their deposit. Blanket appraisals used to set uniform closing prices rarely match the market reality appraisers are documenting. In a handful of cases, buyers have banded together to launch lawsuits over deposit losses or alleged appraisal manipulation. But most are forced to absorb the loss or negotiate one-on-one for meager concessions. For investors and end users alike, the numbers are unforgiving. Assignment listings that once promised easy profit have become a graveyard of failed deals. Redacted appraisal reports show gaps ranging from $50,000 to $150,000, and closing statements from lenders spell out the consequences in black and white. The cash call is immediate, and the stakes are personal: savings drained, deposits lost, and years of planning wiped out by a single number on an appraisal grid. The silent correction is not just a story in the data. It is written into the closing statements, and it is the hard choice buyers now face. Downtown Toronto's skyline is crowded with cranes and glass towers, but beneath the surface, the numbers tell a different story. In 2025, the city faces a record wave of condo completions, thousands of new units hitting the market at once. Data from CMHC shows the highest level of active listings in over a decade. with heat maps lighting up in neighborhoods like City Place, Liberty Village, and Midtown. Stacked charts reveal an inventory glut. More than 8,000 resale condos listed in central Toronto alone, a figure unseen since the early 2000s. For many investors, this is more than a statistic. Take the case of a 2021 buyer who signed for a $950,000 condo, banking on steady appreciation and strong rental demand. When the unit closed in spring 2025, the appraisal landed at $835,000, a gap of $115,000. Lender letters demanded the shortfall in cash, or the buyer would forfeit both the deposit and then years of savings. This is not an isolated case. Broker channels are full of similar stories. Buyers underwater, scrambling to cover appraisal gaps, some forced to walk away. Oversupply is only part of the equation. Rent softness is compounding the pain. CMHC's latest rental data shows downtown rents have flattened or even dipped in the past year, despite population growth. Investors who once counted on rising rents to offset carrying costs are now facing negative cash flow. Listings for rental condos linger on the market, with incentives like free months or lower deposits becoming the norm. The result is a feedback loop. More investors list for sale, swelling inventory further, pushing prices down, and giving appraisers little choice but to rely on weaker comparables. Charts comparing 2021 and 2025 sales make the trend unmistakable. Units that would have fetched $1,200 per square foot at the peak are now closing at $950 per square foot or less. Appraisers, bound by lender requirements to use the most recent sales, cannot justify higher numbers, even if sellers and developers insist their units are worth more. The grid is unforgiving. Every new completion adds to the pile, every rental vacancy chips away at projected income, and every low appraisal sets a new floor for the next round of deals. In Ontario's condo market, the silent correction is no longer hidden. It is documented in every appraisal and every lender demand for more cash at closing. In the 905 suburbs ringing Toronto, the story of the pandemic housing boom is now being rewritten, one appraisal at a time. Detached homes that sold for $1.4 million in 2022 are coming back to market in 2024 and 2025 with a hard reality check. Recent appraisals in York, Peel, and Halton are pegging those same properties at $1.1 million to $1.2 million, a drop of $200,000 to $300,000 in just 2 years. Sellers who once expected bidding wars are instead watching their listings sit for weeks, sometimes months, with little interest. Days on market have stretched from single digits at the peak to 60, 90, even 120 days. Multiple listing service records show some homes relisted 3 or 4 times, each time with a lower asking price, each time hoping for a buyer willing to pay more than the last comparable sale. For many families, the premium they paid to escape the city during the work-from-home rush has vanished. The commuting premium that added extra dollars for bigger lots and quieter streets has faded as return-to-office policies and higher borrowing costs take hold. Mortgage brokers report a steady stream of appraisal shortfalls, with lenders refusing to finance at last year's prices. In some cases, buyers are forced to bring tens of thousands of dollars in extra cash just to close, or they walk away and risk losing their deposits. The evidence piles up in listing histories and appraisal grids, price cuts, terminated listings, and appraisal values that refuse to budge no matter how much a seller insists their home is still worth what it was in 2022. The 905 is no longer immune to Ontario's correction. It has become one of its clearest examples. Ontario's bank risk teams have tightened protocols, quietly reshaping the borrowing landscape. By mid-2024, Appraisals became routine for flagged properties, especially in the GTA, where market swings are sharpest. Lenders now demand two independent valuations for pre-construction assignments, investor condos, and homes purchased near the peak. If either appraisal falls short, the loan shrinks or is denied. Loan-to-value ratios have been cut back. Where 95% financing was once the norm for insured buyers, many files now top out at 90%, or even 85%, particularly for investors or homes in neighborhoods with declining sales. OSFI June 2025 Bulletin requires lenders to adjust risk models in any region with a year-over-year price drop exceeding 5%. This is not a theoretical exercise. It is a mechanical recalculation forcing buyers to find larger down payments or abandon deals. Home equity line of credit limits have also been reduced. As appraised values drop, HELOC ceilings are automatically lowered, sometimes without notice. A homeowner with $200,000 in available credit can see that number fall to $130,000 or less after a renewal appraisal. For those depending on equity for renovations or daily expenses, the squeeze is immediate. Renewal brings another jolt. Loans written at 2.5% in 2021 now reset at 5.5% or higher. Payments jump, and if the new appraisal comes in lower, some borrowers must pay down principal or risk losing renewal. A bank risk manager sums it up. Appraisal gaps have become systemic. We require a second opinion on any file showing pandemic-era price inflation, and we will not approve deals where recent comparables justify a value cut. Public statements from Ontario's largest brokerages strike an upbeat tone, even as appraisal data points in the opposite direction. In September 2025, a widely circulated agent update from a major Toronto firm urged agents to frame current conditions as a seasonal dip, emphasize buyer opportunity and long-term fundamentals, and avoid alarming language. That message is echoed across regional board press releases that call inventory surges, improved selection, and recast price declines as market normalization. Agents on social media and in client emails downplay appraisal gaps, advising sellers to hold firm and telling buyers the correction is temporary. Behind the scenes, appraisal reports and lender notices document a harder reality. Appraisers, bound by recent comparables and lender overlays, are delivering valuations that undercut listing prices and force cash top-ups. Sellers respond by pulling listings before appraisal dates, relisting at old prices, or blaming the process for failed deals. The gap between industry optimism and documented value is now a matter of record, not just opinion. While agents insist this is a pause, not a plunge, the paperwork tells a different story. Lender directives, appraisal grids, and the fine print of every failed closing spell out the same conclusion. Appraisals are revealing the market as it actually stands. Ontario's housing correction is anchored by forces that go far beyond day-to-day market sentiment. At the heart of the issue is a record level of household debt. According to Bank of Canada and StatsCan data, Canadians now owe more than $2.8 trillion, with household debt-to-income ratios among the highest in the G7. Even modest interest rate increases have an outsized impact, squeezing budgets and shrinking what buyers can afford. Meanwhile, population growth, once a key driver of demand, has slowed from the immigration peaks of 2021 and 2022. StatsCan mid-2025 update shows net new arrivals tapering off, easing the upward pressure on prices that rapid population gains once created. Layered on top of this is a construction pipeline that remains wide open. CMHC reports thousands of new units under construction across the GTA, with completions hitting decade highs in both condos and low-rise homes. This incoming supply lands in a market already grappling with high inventory and softening demand. The result is a slow, grinding realignment. too much debt, less organic demand, and a wave of new listings that cannot be absorbed at old prices. These are not temporary headwinds. They are structural anchors, locking in a multi-year period of downward pressure that appraisers are now forced to quantify in every report. Today, appraisers are not just measuring square footage, they are measuring a shift in financial reality across Ontario. With the Greater Toronto Area inventory near 25-year highs and lending standards tightening, the illusions of easy wealth are fading. For homeowners and investors, denial is no longer an option. The real question is not how deep the correction goes, but how honestly we face the numbers now that the truth is on paper.